Hello and welcome to the video on the basics of the Apex review mode. To start off with, I'm going to make a little note of how the software works that's slightly different than our other software. The main thing is the fact that we have live mode and review mode. So I can switch between the modes up here. The software lets me basically collect live data while I'm looking at other data. So if I was collecting a map over here, I could watch a map build in. At the same time, I could be fiddling with data I've already collected in the past. So let's talk about how I can actually start playing with that data and pulling out additional data, changing things, and other options like that. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and just open up a spectrum. So here's a spectrum. I can see again I have a spectrum over here, and I have the full ability basically to do anything I need to with a spectrum. So I have my basic backgrounds, my deconvolutions, and all those options exist over here. And let's say I just needed to, let's say I missed an element or needed to remove an element. In this case, I'll go ahead and remove everybody's favorite TC. We can say, okay, let's go ahead and open up the element list. Let's go ahead and remove this, and now it's removed. Now, any changes I do like this are only going to be temporary until I actually click on the Save button. So let's say I had a spectrum here. I was basically just trying to figure out what different elements I had. It's not going to save that data until I click the Save Changes button. So in this case, I go ahead and click on the Save Changes button. And I've changed the original spectrum itself. I would save that to that file. Let's say I was doing something else and I wanted to save the file separately. I can go ahead and click Send to Project, and this would send it to the project tree as an added spectra with those changes in it, and not change the original spectra. So it's a good way of preserving my data if I wanted to play with it. Just make small changes, but at the same time not save those changes to the original spectrum itself. And again, I have the other options over here, like reply element IDs and everything else that other spectrum mode has in live mode. But one of the biggest differences with this kind of data is that I can also do things in mapping mode. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a map. And here's our map, and we can see this is a sample with a whole bunch of elements in it. It's a geological sample. I can see I got 10 different elements or so, and I can see over here that the elements are are in specific minerals. And what I can do in these kind of maps is I can start doing things like area spectrums. I can click and drag and say, okay, just give me the data from these pixels, and we're going to see the spectrum over here update in real time. It's giving me my basic location, my pixel size, and again, I can go ahead and send this to the project, and it's added a new one up here to the added spectra. So just again, a way of doing this. I could also do this for the green mineral over here. Say, okay, what do I have? It's a calcium phosphate. What's this? It's this orange guy. Okay, it's a zircon. Again, it's just a different way of doing that. And if I want to be a little bit more precise than a box, I can go into free draw mode, and I can say, okay, let's see, just give me these pixels that are drawn in here, and we'll see this update again with just those pixels. In this case, it's 1400 pixels. I was able to get more pixels because I was doing a free draw instead of a box. So those are my options with just, again, pulling out area spectrums. I can also rebuild a line from any kind of map. So here we can see I have a line. Go ahead and just draw a new one. And you can see that in this case I have a line. It's good to do a line scan and rebuild it from the mapping data from this point to this point. And I can go ahead and drag this around, or drag the whole thing, just to be able to say, hey, okay, what's going on? Now the step size in this is going to be based on the map resolution itself, and I can do a couple different kinds of line scan rebuilds. And I have a couple different kinds. And these kinds are very, very important depending on what I'm doing. The main kind is going to be what's called an ROI, or region of interest. The region of interest is basically I'm saying just give me pure counts from one EV to another EV. So I'm basically taking a couple channels in my spectrum and saying just give me all the integrated counts in that area. The net intensity map will do that but remove the background. So over here we can see my spectrum. I can see my little background line. It's going to remove the counts underneath there. And the atomic and the weight percent are just doing the math from the net intensity map to give me basically better numbers. So I'm just going to do an ROI rebuild, and we can see that when I click on the build line, it's going to essentially just run this real quick. It's going to pop up this line here, and I can do things like, okay, in this case I'm just going to add, I'm going to remove some things actually to say, okay, just make this a little bit less busy to look at some of our major elements. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK, and we can see that, it does the map, it rescales it, and we can see that, okay, we're looking at, basically a heavy iron, heavy zircon material with low titaniums, which is to be expected for a sample like this. Over here on my scale bar, you can see that I have just counts. This is just counts. If I did this at atomic percent or weight percent, this would be in weight percent instead. So that's the basics for the line rebuild. What I can also do instead of a line is I can instead do a map. So go ahead and click back to map. Now my map. And again, I can see these same options up here for the maps, including ROI, net, and again a full quantitative rebuild. Just a quick note with the quantitative rebuild, the ZAF map, you're doing a ZAF correction on each pixel depending on the size of the map. It can take a couple minutes depending on what you're doing. So in this case here, I can say again, I can do the basic same thing as with the line. I say I want to build a map with the region of interest. Go ahead and click on rebuild, and again I can add or remove elements at this stage. In this case, I'm not going to rebuild this for time considerations. But again, it's just one of those ways of rebuilding a data set based on what I'm doing.